Greetings and thank you everyone for joining us today for this very important lecture brought to us by the Khalid and Diana Mirza Distinguished Lecture Series as a part of the Mohsin Fawzia Jafri Center for Muslim World Studies in collaboration with the Fatf Havel Program for Human Rights and Diplomacy, the FIU Office of Engagement, the Ruth K. and Shepard Broad Distinguished Lecture Series, the Department of Religious Studies, the Muslim Communities Association, the Coalition of South Florida Muslim Organizations. Today, we have for you a very important topic brought to you by a distinguished and brave lecturer, Professor Chatterji from the University of California, Berkeley, who is a research anthropologist and founding co-chair of the Political Conflict and Gender and People's Rights Initiative at the Center for Race and Gender at UC Berkeley. She has a long and distinguished resume detailing her engagement with a number of disadvantaged groups across South Asia and more broadly. Her work is rooted in local knowledge and immersed in this kind of interdisciplinary South Asia studies, with particular focus again on Kashmir and in India in particular. I'd like to give her some time to speak, so I'll pass it off now and thank her for joining us for this important event.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you to the three of you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here, truly, and always a pleasure to speak with you and to be at you. I don't know how much you know. Are you looking at me there?
No, this is for the online.
I don't know how familiar it is, the subject matter or not, but I'm going to speak for a little while, and if it is things that seem far away or unfamiliar, and you have questions, I would love to engage them. No question is too small or too little, so please hold on to them. And let me start somewhere in the middle. The talk is titled Majoritarian Nationalism and Islamophobia in India Today. Both majoritarian nationalism and Islamophobia are important issues to be talking about in these United States as well. I'd like to start by introducing you to the India to which I speak, the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party's election to government. And I'm going to speak for about 25 minutes. Am I correct? Would you give me a hands up at like 20 minutes? Just make sure I see you, please. Thank you. The Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party's election to government in 2014 and popular re-election in 2019 amplified the ascent of a majoritarian state in it. Configured along colonial and feudal fault lines of religion, ethnos, and identity. Decades of political conflict, racial inequalities, and callous governance in the country led to this consolidation of power by the right. Majoritarian nationalism sanctifies India as intrinsically Hindu and marks the non-Hindu as its adversary. Race and nation are made synonymous as Hindus, the formerly colonized, now governing elite, are depicted as the national race of Hindu citizens. A formative strategy of governance for the contemporary Hindu right is A, the proliferation of discourse and practice against Muslims and Islam, and B, the cultivation of discourse and practice that inculcates acrimony toward Muslims and Islam among non-Muslims in India, ranging across the continuum from dislike to violent hatred. Physical and organized attacks, lynching, abuse, deep systemic discrimination have made India's Muslims, numbering over 190 million people, one of the most vulnerable populations anywhere in the world. Fastest, racist, heteronormative, The government led by Narendra Modi incorporates populism, nationalism, authoritarianism, and majoritarianism, while the grassroots cadre of millions of Hindu nationalists weaponize religion and politics to incite Islamophobia among the Hindu majority. The politicization of religion and racialization of Muslims across India target difference as anti-national, repositioning India's already conflicted democracy. In December 2021, a video went viral showing the proceedings of a religious parliament, a Dharma Sansad, a specific kind of religious assembly where attendees took a collective oath to turn India into a Hindu Rashtra state by exterminating Muslims. Authenticating citizenship. The BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP its acronym, led government has emphasized the need to reconstitute the basis of Indian citizenship through changes in the law in the interest of national security. Prejudicial citizenship laws akin to the Nuremberg laws instituted in September 1935 in Nazi Germany are scheduled for enforcement across the country. These laws privilege Hindus in defining citizenship and place the rights and protections of religious minorities at grave risk, targeting Muslims. The Government of India passed the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019, determined to commence an All India National Register of Citizens, also in 2019. The BJP's pilot implementation is focused on the state of Assam in the northeast, with injurious gendered impact on its sizable Muslim population, and also that affects Adivasis, indigenous or tribal communities, Dalits, formerly known as untouchable, today continuing caste-oppressed communities, and other caste-following groups. The law requires individuals to prove that they are citizens through an arduous process that is heavily weighted against some sizable Muslim population. Individuals who are incriminated as illegal and as foreigners are mostly local inhabitants who are socially and economically marginalized. Bangla descent Muslims who are unable to meet the government's demands to prove their citizenship or whose documentary evidence is rejected are faced with the threat of expulsion, exile, and statelessness. People have been declared foreigners without their knowledge. Families have been forcibly separated. Those who experience the risk of expulsion have committed suicide and have been detained in makeshift internment camps. The citizenship experiment focuses on two intersecting chronologies: the exclusionary amendments to the law and the implosive situation on the ground, driven by Hindu far-right nationalists. The assertion is that a large number of Muslims residing in India are doing so illegally and are therefore not Indian. If they are not Indian, who are they? The modalities for safe harbor that apply to other communities today exclude Muslims. The changes to the citizenship law are intensifying earlier efforts dating back to the colonial and post-colonial period. The BJP's objective of granting citizenship to illegal, undocumented, non-Muslim immigrants, illegal, their choice of words, because they are non-Muslims, poses both an illegal challenge and a messaging conundrum. This unreserved rejection and exclusion of a community, Muslims, based on their faith, would require a categorical contravention of India's constitutional and juridical structure, recanting its democratic and historical obligations. Reordering Indian citizenship is fortifying legal discrimination, as I mentioned, and I want to underscore, based on religion in a country of over 1.35 billion persons, where minority groups constitute more than 21% of the population. This state of exception, surged through the citizenship experiment, makes religion a priority for Indian citizenship in ways that privileges only the majority community. While it will be practically impossible to put all those declared foreigners in detention camps, local communities fear that such camps will produce a new social order of forcibly separated families, broken communities, and forced labor. Those declared foreigners throughout India may constitute a mass of repeatedly displaced individuals and peoples without rights and legal protections. They may become, indeed, the nowhere people, refugees on their own land. The advance of aggressive majoritarianism in India correspondingly impacts Kashmir, continuing the government's militarized rule and colonial posture toward Kashmir. Conditions on the ground in Kashmir are in a state of emergency. It is a place of no rights, shackled in concertina wires, suffocating in a state of eternal lockdown. Kashmiris live in a context that is akin to having no rights or being able to exercise rights. Every neighborhood is impaired and each life is impacted. Kashmiris amongst whom Muslims are in a majority and their allies are repeatedly depicted as enemies of India, as potential agents of terror. On August 5, 2019, Kashmir's partial autonomy was revoked by the government of India, nullifying Article 370 and revoking Article 35A of the Indian Constitution, as tens of thousands of additional troops, state troops, were reportedly deployed. The invalidation of these articles destroyed the very constitutional safeguard that could make the nullification of these articles contra legem, against the law, and made the subsequent actions of the Indian state possible. Following August 5, Kashmir witnessed the torture of children, the elderly, and women, sexualized violence, illegal and mass detentions, house arrests of political leaders, curtailments of freedom of speech, movement and dissent, falsification of social facts by the state, and the courts were of sacred places. People were afraid to approach the courts lest the extra-legal detention be converted to formal detention. The impact on Kashmir's political economy is devastating, leading to a loss of reportedly $2.4 billion at the time. The actions of the military, paramilitary, and police in Kashmir on the local population are disbursed through extrajudicial means and those authorized by law. Impunity laws are used to enforce militarized governments and extend immunity to one of the largest military forces in the world for human rights abuses, as exemplified by the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the Jammu Kashmir Disturbed Areas Act, and ironically named the Public Safety Act. Kashmir's population lives with recurrent psychosocial trauma and a very high rate of suicidal behaviors. Unable to practice desire or intent for self-determination, violence against civilian men there has expanded spaces for enacting violence against women. Present-day conditions on the ground are such that conviction rate for crimes against women in Kashmir is 3.4% in comparison to India, where the conviction rate is 29.8%. Women have been forced to disproportionately assume the task of caregiving to disintegrated families and undertake the work of seeking justice following disappearances and deaths. Gendered and sexualized violence that inevitably marks Kashmir are used as acts of power, torture, and weapons in war. To have a long and complex history across colonialism and in post-coloniality, and in the post and post-coloniality is always in fact promissory note rather than actualization. The body is signified as cultural property, and violence is the deliverance of justice enacted to punish the woman. Through targeting the individual, sexualized violence acts as a political the political and cultural identity of subjugated groups. Nationalist violence combines both militarization and patriarchy. I have spent a long time in Kashmir working there, including with my colleagues Pervez Imroz, and today incarcerated with the human rights defender, Pervez. Before our work was disallowed, we were able to uncover and report on 2,900, slightly over 2,900 bodies held in 2,700 mass graves. Our findings are available at process.org. The report is titled Buried Evidence. From that, I wish to speak to a brief fragment. Kashmir delimits the space of their life, a life in which rights become impossible. The alignment of national security with aggressive majoritarianism prohibits reflection on the part of India and Indians, many Indians, on why Kashmiris resist. Such reflection is represented as seditious. In response to chronic oppression, Kashmiri civil society has repeatedly taken to the streets in large numbers. Their silent and active protest bear expression to profound grief, fatigue, heartbreak, rage, resilience, and resistance. How am I doing this time?
11 minutes in.
Perfect. Uttar Pradesh. Just before the Bharatiya Janata Party came to power at the center, massified violence against Muslims in Muzaffarnagar in Uttar Pradesh, India's largest state in 2013, marked Uttar Pradesh as the next frontier in Hindu nationalism's incursion into body politic. Between 27th August and 17th September of that year, 2013, massified violence targeted the Muslim community. At the onset, two Hindus accused and killed a Muslim youth for allegedly sexually harassing a Hindu woman and relative. In the violence that ensued, 62 people died, 93 suffered injuries, women were gang raped, and approximately 40 to 50,000 people were displaced. 3 months after the violence, relief camps were shut down. Uttar Pradesh is foundational to the BJP's current experiment in amplifying the seemingly irreversible crusade to render India a Hindu state. The incumbent head of state, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, not his real name apparently, is a Hindu nationalist hardliner from the party. Adityanath has supported and directed various campaigns to override the rights of Muslims and other vulnerable communities. In a video that surfaced in 2014, he reportedly stated that if Muslims take one Hindu girl, you take 100 Muslims. If they kill one Hindu, you will kill 100 Muslims. Adityanath has steadily elevated himself as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's political successor. It may be underscored here that the massacre of Muslims by Hindu nationalists in Gujarat in 2002, while Modi was chief minister there, helped catapult Modi to national standing among the Hindu right. Since his time in office, Adityanath in Uttar Pradesh has exhibited a chronic disregard for democracy. This has encouraged and inflamed the militant wing of Hindu nationalists and enabled a number of Hindu right-wing activists to make deep inroads into the state machinery. Shortly after he came to power, local BJP leaders met with him. There, they said that the Uttar Pradesh government begin a process to withdraw 131 criminal cases where alleged perpetrators were Hindus against Muslims in the city of Muzaffarnagar. Between 2018 and 2021, Adityanath's government approved the formal withdrawal of as many as 79 cases. They comprise about 14% of the 566 cases that have been filed. The Muzaffarnagar cases included 4 gang rape incidents where the accused were acquitted. Under Yogi Adityanath, Uttar Pradesh has experienced soaring economic and political troubles, including the failure to deliver economic and social development during the time of the COVID crisis. Adityanath claimed in February 2022, I believe, that during his rule since 2017, no farmers had committed suicide in context with agricultural distress. While the National Crime Records Bureau reported that 87 farmers in Uttar Pradesh had committed suicide since 2020. In March 2021, Adityanath claimed that there had been no riots or violence. Organized riots assume a certain spontaneity, while most massive violence in India appear to be planned and orchestrated. So he claimed that there had been no such violences in the state since 2017, a claim that was debunked by a fact-checking website using the government of India's own data, reporting that there had been 23,612 such reported riots in Uttar Pradesh between 2017 and 2019. In December 2018, United Nations Human Rights Special Rapporteurs also wrote to the government of India expressing their concern. Using provisions of the Prevention of Cow Slaughter Act, one of the first orders implemented by Adityanath, he raided abattoirs and butcher shops, citing operational regulations disproportionately targeting Muslim and Dalit livelihoods. According to the US State Department, as of August 2020, Uttar Pradesh police had filed 1,716 charges of cow slaughter arresting more than 4,000 persons. Hindu nationalist mobs have attacked interfaith weddings in Uttar Pradesh between Muslims and Hindus, or called to break up such events, sometimes merely on presumption, promoting the conspiracy theory of love jihad that propagates Muslim men as seeking to marry Hindu women, to convert them to Islam, to change India's demographic in favor of Muslims. The Adityanath government introduced and approved the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religious Ordinance of 2020, which is referred locally as the Love Jihad law. The anti-miscegenation and anti-conversion statute took effect 4 days later. The BJP extols the 1992 demolition of Babri Masjid in the city of Ayodhya. Hindu nationalists become patriotic bodies configured as artillery made to consign terror on the Muslim body. An investigative report on Uttar Pradesh by The Guardian, the paper, The Guardian's Hannah Ellis Peterson, published on October 30, 2022, this year, demonstrates a Hindu right-wing strategy that is on the rise, wherein Hindus and Hindu groups bring lawsuits against Muslim mosques to contest the ownership over the mosque property, sometime in connection with large crowds of Hindus forcibly entering the sacred spaces. Hindu right-wing groups have filed dozens of lawsuits against Muslim places of worship with the BJP's tacit support. There is fear that as in the case of Babri Masjid, is destroyed where a large Hindu mob destroyed in 1992 the property, and the property was handed over to Hindus via 2019 Supreme Court ruling. This is providing a roadmap for repetition by other Hindu right-wing groups. Hindu right-wing groups have also attacked a Gurgaon mosque in Karnataka. Another Hindu mob forcibly entered a madrasa and put a Hindu idol inside. Recently, the Shahi Idgah mosque in Mathura, Uttar Pradesh was also targeted with 12 lawsuits. The pivotal case is reportedly the Gandhari Mosque in Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh, built in the 17th century. The case began with one lawsuit brought by 5 Hindu women in 2021, claiming the mosque was built atop a raised Shiva Hindu temple. The mosque now faces 15 lawsuits, and though Muslims still pray there, the mosque has heavy security with intense law enforcement presence, as a security presence. My research evidences that the portrayal of mosques built over Hindu temples across the land becomes emblematic of a violent erasure in which Muslims are eviscerated by Hindus, right-wing Hindus. With the urge seems to be to not only desecrate property, but also erase and revision Muslim history in relation to what is India today. At a parallel, anti-Muslim and religion-based violence between June and October this year has included, for example, a viral video that showed police beating 9 Muslim men in custody. One other statistic I wish, or social fact I wish to give you, is that government authorities have demolished close to 36,000 homes, evicting over 200,000 people across urban and rural India, connected to the use of bulldozers to demolish Muslim homes that has become pervasive in symbolic breakage of Muslim protest to Hindu nationalism. I want to end with a few comments. I'm sorry that all this was possibly heavy, complicated. The last segment is entitled Islamophobia, the War. The violence of Islamophobia is integral to the contemporary Hindu nationalist ethic and erasure of the Muslim other. The expansion of what is Islamic and Muslim in India's history and present is iterated as strategy that appear and reappear through the country. Such erasure is enforced in skin and bone on human bodies, history, present, and future. Hindu nationalist exploitations of Islamophobia signify the body and property of what is sacred to Muslims across India as not Muslim, and violence as deliverance of justice enacted to punish Islamic heritage, cultures, and practices. Through targeting the individual and community, nationalist and gendered violence targets the political and cultural identities of subjugated groups. The practice of Islamophobia signals the physical and epistemic exclusion of Muslims from legitimate society. Exclusion, after all, is implicit in the structure of past oppression in India today. It has been repeatedly manifest in violent relation of dominant caste privileged Hindus to Adivasis, Dalits, Christians, Sikhs, Parsis, Muslims, and others. Exclusion and extreme xenophobia are fundamental to the non-recognition of humanity of those who are vulnerable and subaltern. Such practices of ostracization and racialism have been prerequisite to fostering a sense of Hindu purity in designating Muslims as enemy in Kashmir, as other and outsider in Assam. The structure of exclusion compels violence. Violence is an act of power through rape, torture, as a weapon of enforcement, has a long and complex history across the subcontinent. A large body of literature has analyzed the deployment of sexual violence, for example, in women of the other, as vindication by members of dominant culture. The execution of violence and death continues to exist on the borderline of what is socially and juridically sanctioned. Violence is a category of analysis, reveals the distance and continuity between routine and spectacular violences used by Hindu nationalists. It impacts and drives decision and response and constitutes lives, communities, place, politics. Exclusion is compounded by separation and severing. There can be no Indian culture without Muslim and Islamic cultures, even as revisionism fabricates Muslim and Islamic cultures as outside and anti what is Indian today. The relations between a Hindu-dominant Indian state and its governance of Muslim minorities through minoritization are shaped by multiple hierarchies of power. The discourse of nation building equates hyper-masculinization with decolonization, as Hindu nationalist prose dictates the domestication of Muslim others. India's production of the Muslim as a distinct, or Hindu right India's production of the Muslim as a distinct and monolithic subjective identity in which religion is the essential marker, assumes that the political sensibilities of all Muslims correlate with their religious identities. Islam, Muslims, and violence are interpreted as coextensive with one another, and democracy is dissociated from Islam. Public discourse is suppressed in order to make visible the infliction of violence on Muslim bodies by state and non-state groups. Muslim men racialized as hypersexual and violent. These logics are profoundly shaped by the Indian state's protracted targeting of Kashmiri Muslim men, and today mainstream. Muslim male violence is understood as representative of the culture, criminalizing Muslim men and escalating racialism and Islamophobia. Life organized by Islamophobia undermines the Muslim community's capacity to intervene in regularized and intimate impairments. Subjugation also requires the complicity of Muslims and forms a collaborator class whose actions and allegiances are complex. The reach of state power over minority Muslim lives has propelled an unabating emergency wherein the Indian government has exceeded its authority. The rule of law is subverted through pervasive securitization and authoritarian arbitrariness that operates in the name of national well-being, spurring immense social and political violence, new forms of partition, a would-be erasure of Muslims in India that signals the onset of absolute nationalism. So we'll see.
Let me ask the first question.
Yes.
So what happened to Indian democracy? Whole system, whole function, the history, the pride. But it seems to me that this top-down has a lot of acceptability at least at some level. No. Am I right about that, or just there's an imposition and
I think that,
One second. So we want to just thank everybody who joined us on the Zoom. That will conclude Dr. Chatterji's talk. Thank you all so much for joining us. On behalf of the Muslim and Fawzia Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies, as well as the Khalid and Diana Mirza Distinguished Lecture Series. We hope to see you all. And again, Dr. Chatterji, thank you so much.